A boy returns woman's lost phone. Moments later, he gets a surprising reward. Enjoy the story. Hunger gnawed at Cody Davidson's stomach like a caged animal. He was used to ignoring it. It was a habit learned the hard way, just like sleeping, in the cold, or pretending that his worn-out shoes still protected his feet from the rain. At 19, he carried a burden many would never know, the responsibility of supporting his sick mother with the meager salary of an attendant at a small cafe in Boston. Each day was a battle against time and necessity. His mother needed expensive medication, and the overdue bills were a cruel reminder that they could be evicted at any moment. Cody had no luxuries. The money he earned barely covered the essentials. But what hurt most was seeing his co-workers engrossed in their new phones, laughing at videos and connecting with the world while he pretended not to care. He had always wanted a phone, a simple device that would make him feel a little less invisible. But wanting didn't mean having. That afternoon seemed like any other. The cafe was full. The smell of coffee and fresh bread permeated the air. And Cody wiped the tables tired when he saw something that made his heart race. A phone, not just any phone, a top-of-the-line model, sleek and expensive. He looked around. The owner had already left. The device was there, calling to him. He picked it up with trembling hands. It could be his. For a moment, he imagined having access to the world that had always been denied to him. He could look for better jobs, study at night, talk to people without feeling inferior. But then, the hunger returned. He thought about the stack of bills on the kitchen table. He thought about the medicine his mother needed that he couldn't afford. If he sold that phone, he could solve some of his problems. The thought dug deep into his mind. He felt cold sweat dripping down his neck. Who would know? Nobody saw him. He could simply put the phone in his pocket and go on with his life. But then he heard in his mind the weak voice of his mother, who had raised him alone, teaching him that even in the worst of difficulties, dignity has no price. Cody, always do what is right, even when no one is watching. The weight of his decision was crushing. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and walked to the counter. Someone forgot a phone at one of the tables. The manager took the device and made a call. Minutes later, a well-dressed woman entered the cafe, her eyes wide with desperation. "You found a phone?" she asked, almost breathless. Cody nodded and handed over the device. Her eyes shone with relief. "Oh my God! Thank you so much. I was already desperate." She looked at him more carefully. Simple clothes, tired eyes, calloused hands. "What's your name?" "Cody, ma'am." The woman was silent for a moment. There was something about that boy, something rare. She opened her purse and pulled out an envelope. "Cody, I'm a businesswoman and a millionaire, and I know integrity when I see it. You could have kept this phone, no one would ever know. But you chose the right path." She handed the envelope to him. Cody looked inside, and his breath caught. Bills. Many bills. More money than he had ever held in his life. "I want you to use this money to buy a phone for yourself. Honesty should be rewarded." The world around him seemed to spin. His vision blurred, and he felt a lump in his throat. He never expected anything. No one had ever given him anything. I don't even know what to say," he stammered. The woman smiled. "Then don't say anything. Just continue being the amazing person you are." Cody left the cafe with a new weight in his pocket. But this time it wasn't a burden, it was hope. Little did he know that this gesture would change his life forever. The next morning, Cody woke up earlier than usual. The envelope with the money was still there, resting on his nightstand. He hadn't told his mother about it yet, afraid that somehow it might disappear if he spoke about it. The money felt like a dream, something too good to be true, especially for someone like him, who had grown accustomed to disappointment. He got ready for work in the cramped bathroom they shared in their small apartment. The pipes groaned, and the water came out rust-colored at first, another reminder of the decay surrounding them. As he looked in the cracked mirror, he saw the dark circles under his eyes, evidence of countless nights spent worrying about bills and his mother's health. When he entered the kitchen, his mother was already there, struggling to make breakfast despite her arthritis. Evelyn Davidson was only 45, but rheumatoid arthritis and years of working multiple jobs had aged her prematurely. Her hands were gnarled, and simple tasks like pouring coffee had become challenges. "Morning, sweetheart," she said with a smile that somehow always managed to light up their dim apartment. "I made you some toast." Cody felt a pang of guilt as he watched her wince when setting the plate down. "Mom, you shouldn't be doing this. You should be resting." "I'm not an invalid yet," she replied with a tinge of pride in her voice. "Besides, I have a good feeling about today." If only she knew, Cody thought. The envelope was burning a hole in his pocket, but he wasn't sure. How to tell her about it? Would she think he had stolen it? Would she make him return it? His mother had always been proud, sometimes to a fault. "Listen, Mom," he began, sitting down at their small kitchen table. "Yesterday something happened." But before he could continue, his mother erupted into a coughing fit that shook her entire body. Cody jumped up to get her water and medication, his heart racing. These episodes had been becoming more frequent, and the doctor had warned that without proper treatment, her condition would continue to deteriorate. As her coughing subsided, Cody made a decision. "Mom, I'm taking you to Dr. Alvarez today." "We can't afford—" "Yes, we can," he interrupted, pulling out the envelope. "I have money." Her eyes widened as he explained what had happened the previous day. Rather than questioning him or demanding he return the money, tears welled up in her eyes. "You've always been a good boy, Cody," she whispered, reaching out to touch his face with her twisted fingers. "Your father would have been so proud." His father. The man who had abandoned them when Cody was just 5. The mention of him still stirred a complex mix of emotions, anger, sadness, and a hollow longing for a figure he barely remembered. "This is enough for your treatment and a month's rent," Cody said, changing the subject. "And maybe I could get a phone too." His mother smiled through her tears. "You deserve that, sweetheart. You've sacrificed so much." Later that day, after securing an appointment with Dr. Alvarez for the following week, Cody headed to work with a lighter heart. For the first time in years, hope didn't feel like a luxury they couldn't afford. But as he approached the cafe, he noticed an unusual crowd gathered outside. A sleek black car was parked in front, and people were whispering excitedly. "There he is!" someone shouted when they spotted Cody. Before he could process what was happening, a tall man in an expensive suit approached him. "Are you Cody Davidson?" Cody nodded, confusion evident on his face. "Ms. Eleanor Wright would like to speak with you," the man said, gesturing toward the cafe. The name meant nothing to Cody, but as he entered his workplace, he immediately recognized the woman from yesterday, the owner of the phone. She was sitting at a table sipping coffee, looking even more elegant than he remembered. "Ah, Cody," she said, rising to greet him. "I was hoping to catch you before your shift. Please, join me." Bewildered, Cody sat across from her, acutely, aware of his shabby clothes and the curious stares from his co-workers. "I've been thinking about our encounter yesterday," Ms. Wright began. "Your honesty moved me more than you know. In my world, the business world, integrity is rare." She placed a business card on the table. "I would like to offer you a position at my company, Wright Industries. We need people with your character." Cody stared at the card, unable to comprehend what was happening. "But I don't have any qualifications. I didn't even finish high school." "Skills can be taught, Cody," she interrupted gently. "Character is innate. And besides, we have an education program for employees. You could earn your diploma while working for me." It felt like the ground was shifting beneath him. Just yesterday, he had been worried about making rent. Now, this woman, this stranger, was offering him a chance to change his entire life. "Why?" he finally managed to ask. "Why me?" Eleanor's expression softened. "Years ago, I was in a position similar to yours. Someone took a chance on me when I had nothing to offer but my determination and integrity. I've always promised myself I would pass that kindness forward when I found someone deserving." As Cody struggled to find words, his manager approached, looking irritated. "Davidson, if you're done socializing, we have tables that need cleaning." Eleanor turned to the manager with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Actually, I was just offering Cody a job at my company, starting salary of $45,000 with benefits." The manager's jaw dropped, and Cody felt as if he might faint. That was more than twice what he was making now. I need to think about it, Cody stammered, overwhelmed. Of course, Eleanor replied, standing. Take the weekend. Call me. On Monday with your decision. As she left, Cody remained seated, the business card clutched in his trembling hand. It felt as if the universe had suddenly tilted on its axis, offering him a glimpse of a future he had never dared to imagine. If you are enjoying the story, type 5 in the comments and subscribe for more videos like this. If not, type 0. It helps me create even better content for you. Continuing. Cody's legs felt like jelly as he walked home that evening, the weight of Eleanor Wright's offer pressing on his mind. The busy streets of Boston seemed different somehow, as if the city itself had transformed overnight. The same cracked sidewalks he'd walked thousands of times now felt like a path to somewhere new. He stopped at a convenience store, a place he usually avoided because it represented all the small luxuries he couldn't afford. Today, though, he walked in with purpose and bought a prepaid phone. Nothing fancy, just a basic model that would allow him to call Ms. Wright on Monday. He used only a fraction of the money from the envelope, carefully saving the rest for his mother's medical treatment. When he finally arrived home, he found his mother sitting at the kitchen table with a stack of unopened bills. Her face was drawn with worry, but it brightened when she saw him. "You're home early," she said, quickly shuffling the bills into a pile and tucking them away, a futile attempt to shield him from worries that had long been shared. Cody couldn't contain himself. The words tumbled out as he told her everything about Ms. Wright, the job offer, the salary that seemed like a fortune to their modest standards. With each detail, his mother's eyes grew wider, tears gathering at the corners. "Oh, Cody," she whispered when he finished, This is a miracle." "It's not a miracle, Mom," he replied, taking her hands in his. "Ms. Wright said it was because of my character, because I did the right thing." A shadow crossed Evelyn's face. "Your father always said that honesty was for fools." She squeezed his hands. "I'm so glad you didn't turn out like him." The mention of his father cast a momentary pall over their celebration. Dean Davidson had been a charming man with fluid morals, always looking for the easy way out. His departure had left them financially devastated and emotionally scarred. The child support checks had stopped coming years ago. "Have you heard from him?" Cody asked, the question slipping out before he could stop it. His mother shook her head. "Not since your 16th birthday. I think he's in Florida now, but who knows?" A familiar mixture of relief and disappointment washed over Cody. Part of him had always hoped his father would return, apologize, make things right. Another part was grateful for his absence, afraid of the influence he might have. "So, are you going to take the job?" Evelyn asked, clearly eager to change the subject. "I think I have to, right? It would be crazy not to. It would mean leaving the cafe," his mother pointed out. "Mr. Russo has been good to us." It was true, the cafe owner had given Cody a job when no one else would, had been flexible about his hours when Evelyn needed care, had even slipped them leftover pastries on particularly difficult days. The thought of leaving brought a twinge of guilt. "I know," Cody sighed, "but this is a chance we can't pass up. With this salary, we could move to a better apartment, one without mold in the bathroom. You could get the treatment you need." His mother's eyes filled with tears again, but these were different, tears of hope rather than despair. "You've been carrying our family for so long, sweetheart. You deserve this break." That night, Cody lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Change was coming, swift and unexpected, like a summer storm. It filled him with both exhilaration and terror. What if he wasn't good enough? What if he failed at this new job? What if Ms. Wright regretted her decision? But beneath these fears lay a bedrock of determination. He would work harder than anyone else. He would learn whatever he needed to learn. He would make this opportunity count, for himself and for his mother. The weekend passed in a blur of anticipation. Cody spent Sunday researching Wright Industries on the public library computers, discovering that the company specialized in sustainable urban development and had a reputation for innovative community projects. He learned that Eleanor Wright had founded the company 15 years ago and had turned it into a multi-million-dollar enterprise. The more he read, the more intimidated he felt. On Monday morning, with trembling fingers, he dialed the number on the business card. When Eleanor answered, her voice calm and assured, he took a deep breath and accepted her offer. "Excellent," she said, not sounding surprised. "Can you start next Monday? That will give you time to give notice at your current job and to get settled. I've arranged for Mark, my assistant, you met him briefly, to help with your transition." As he hung up, Cody felt a strange mixture of elation and vertigo, as if he was standing at the edge of a cliff, about to leap into the unknown. The safety of his routine was behind him now. Ahead lay a vast expanse of possibility. His next stop was the cafe where he had to break the news to Mr. Russo. The old Italian man listened in silence as Cody explained the situation, his bushy eyebrows drawing together. "So you're leaving us," he said when Cody finished, his accent thickening with emotion. "Yes, sir, I've given it a lot of thought, and I think it's the right decision for me and my mom." Mr. Russo was quiet for a long moment, and Cody feared he might be angry. But then the older man's face broke into a wide smile, and he pulled Cody into a tight embrace. "Of course it is. Do you think I want you wiping tables forever? This is America, land of opportunity. You grab this chance with both hands, you hear me?" Relief washed over Cody. "Thank you, Mr. Russo, for everything." But as the week progressed, and Cody worked his final shifts at the cafe, saying goodbye to regular customers who had become something like family, doubt began to creep in. The cafe had been his anchor during tumultuous years. Its rhythms were familiar: the morning rush of commuters grabbing coffee, the midday lull, the afternoon influx of students. He knew every crack in the tile floor, every quirk of the temperamental espresso machine. What if he couldn't adapt to a corporate environment? What if the other employees with their college degrees and polished manners looked down on him? What if this was all a terrible mistake? On Friday, his last day, Mr. Russo closed the cafe early and threw Cody a small going-away party. The staff and a few regulars gathered around a cake that read, "Good luck, Cody," in blue icing. There were hugs and well-wishes, small gifts and cards. Maya, the barista who had trained him, pressed a coffee mug into his hands. "So you don't forget us when you're all fancy and important," she teased, but her eyes were damp. By the time he left the cafe for the last time, night had fallen. The streetlights cast pools of yellow on the sidewalk, and a chill wind whispered of the approaching autumn. Cody stood for a moment, looking back at the warm glow from the cafe windows, committing the scene to memory. Then he turned and walked toward home, toward the future that awaited him on Monday morning. Each step took him further from the life he had known and closer to the one that was about to begin. But the path ahead was not as straight or smooth as it appeared. Unseen complications lurked, and the transition from a simple cafe worker to a corporate employee would test Cody in ways he couldn't yet imagine. What happens when a young man with no experience suddenly enters a world of power, ambition, and complex relationships? Will Cody's integrity remain intact, or will he be forced to compromise his values to succeed? And what of Ms. Wright's true motives? Is her generosity truly altruistic, or does she have reasons of her own for bringing Cody into her world? The weekend passed in a whirlwind of preparation. Cody spent what little savings he had on a second-hand suit, polished his scuffed dress shoes until they gleamed, and practiced introducing himself in the mirror until the words "Cody Davidson from Wright Industries" didn't sound like a lie. His mother had helped him press his shirt, her gnarled fingers working meticulously despite the pain, her eyes shining with pride. Monday morning arrived shrouded in fog, as if Boston itself was holding its breath in anticipation. Cody left, earlier than necessary, terrified of being late on his first day. The bus ride downtown was interminable, each stop a small eternity. When he finally arrived at the gleaming glass tower that housed Wright Industries, he stood on the sidewalk for several long minutes, gathering his courage. The lobby was a cathedral of marble and light, making him acutely aware of his shabby suit and borrowed briefcase. The security guard eyed him suspiciously until he mentioned Eleanor Wright's name, which acted like a magic spell, transforming scrutiny into deference. 15th floor, the guard said, pointing to a bank of elevators. "Someone will meet you. There." The elevator was crowded with professionals in tailored suits and designer dresses, all exuding an aura of belonging that Cody lacked. He tried to make himself smaller, afraid that someone would point and declare him an imposter. When the doors opened on the 15th floor, he stepped out with relief, only to find himself in an open-plan office space that seemed to stretch endlessly. Cody Davidson. He turned to find a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses approaching, hand extended. It was Mark, Eleanor's assistant. "Welcome to Wright Industries. Ms. Wright asked me to show you around and get you settled." Mark's smile was professional but warm. "First-day nerves." "Is it that obvious?" Cody asked, wiping his palms on his pants. Mark chuckled. "I threw up in the bathroom on my first day here. You're doing fine in comparison." The small confession eased some of Cody's tension, as Mark led him through the office, introducing him to a bewildering number of people whose names he immediately forgot. He struggled to absorb the vastness of his new workplace. There were departments for design, marketing, community outreach, legal affairs, an entire ecosystem of professionals working in concert. "And this," Mark said finally, stopping at a small but tidy cubicle, "is your workspace, for now at least. Ms. Wright mentioned you'll be starting in the mailroom while you learn the ropes, but she has plans for you." Cody set his briefcase down on the desk, running his fingers along the smooth surface. His own desk, his own computer, his own nameplate, already in place. Cody Davidson, Junior Operations Assistant. "Ms. Wright would like to see you in her office at 10, Mark added, checking his watch. "That gives you about an hour to get comfortable. Can I get you some coffee?" After Mark left, Cody sat in his ergonomic chair, feeling like a child playing office. The computer in front of him was sleek and new, far more advanced than the ancient desktops at the public library, where he occasionally checked emails. He pressed the power button gingerly, half expecting it to reject his touch. As he waited for the system to boot up, he noticed a framed photo on his desk, a picture of him and his mother from years ago before her illness had taken its toll. They were at a Red Sox game, both smiling broadly, arms around each other. Cody picked up the frame, confused. He didn't own this photo, hadn't even known it existed. There was a small note attached to the back, to remind you what matters most. A.W. The personal touch so unexpected brought a lump to his throat. How had she found this? Why would she go to such trouble for someone she barely knew? At precisely 10 o'clock, Cody knocked on Eleanor Wright's office door. Her voice, clear and commanding, bade him enter. Her office was both impressive and understated. Large windows with a view of the Boston skyline, modern furniture in neutral tones, a few tasteful art pieces. Eleanor herself sat behind a massive desk, but rose to greet him when he entered. "Cody, good morning. How are you settling in?" "Everyone's been very kind," he replied, forcing himself to meet her gaze despite his nervousness. "Thank you for the photo. It was unexpected." A small smile played at the corners of her mouth. "I hope you don't mind. I did a bit of research on you after our meeting. It's something of a habit in my line of work." The statement should have felt invasive, but somehow it didn't. There was an openness about Eleanor that made Cody feel she had no hidden agendas. "I asked you here to clarify a few things," she continued, gesturing for him to sit. "As Mark, I probably told you you'll be starting in the mailroom. It's not glamorous, but it's the best way to learn about every department in the company. I did the same when I first started in this industry." She paused, studying him. "I want to be clear about something. I didn't hire you as a charity case, Cody. I hired you because I believe you have potential. But realize this, having potential means nothing without the drive to develop it. I'm giving you an opportunity, not a handout." Her directness was bracing but not unkind. "I understand," Cody said, straightening in his chair. "I'm ready to work hard." "Good, because it will be hard. You'll be studying for your GED while working full-time. You'll be learning an entirely new industry. There will be days when you want to quit." "I won't quit," Cody said, with more confidence than he felt. Eleanor nodded, seemingly satisfied. "One more thing. Your mother's medical care. Cody tensed. How much did this woman know about his life? Our company has an excellent health insurance plan, but you won't be eligible for 3 months. In the meantime, I've arranged for your mother to see Dr. Karina Patel at Massachusetts General. She's one of the best rheumatologists in the country. All expenses will be covered. For a moment, Cody couldn't speak. The generosity was overwhelming, almost frightening in its magnitude. Ms. Wright, I can't accept. You can and you will, she interrupted, her tone brooking no argument. Consider it an advance on your future contributions to this company. As Cody left her office, his mind was a tempest of emotions. Gratitude, confusion, determination, and beneath it all a nagging question. Why him? What did Eleanor Wright see in a high school dropout from a broken home that warranted such investment? The answer would come in time, but for now, he had a job to do. As he made his way back to his cubicle, he passed a group of young executives, all polished confidence and easy laughter. One of them, a man about his age with perfectly coiffed hair and an expensive watch, gave him a dismissive glance before turning back to his companions. So that's Wright's new project, the man said, not bothering to lower his voice. Wonder what this one did to earn the golden ticket. The comment stung, but Cody kept walking, his back straight. He'd faced worse than petty office politics. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he would meet them head-on. The first weeks at Wright Industries passed in a blur of new experiences. The mailroom was indeed unglamorous, a basement room filled with carts, bins, and the constant hum of sorting machines. Cody's days were spent delivering packages and documents throughout the building, learning the layout of departments, and beginning to understand the complex organism that was a corporate enterprise. Evenings were dedicated to GED preparation, his kitchen table covered with textbooks, as he struggled to recall mathematics and history he'd last encountered years ago. His mother, despite her pain, often sat with him, offering encouragement when frustration threatened to overwhelm him. And through it all, there was Eleanor Wright, a distant but constant presence. She seemed to materialize at crucial moments, offering a word of advice when he looked lost, checking on his progress with the GED studies, inquiring about his mother's health. Each interaction was brief but meaningful, reinforcing Cody's sense that she was investing not just in an employee, but in a person. But as October gave way to November, and the Boston streets were blanketed with fallen leaves, Cody began to notice undercurrents in the company that troubled him. There were whispers in break rooms that fell silent when he approached, sidelong glances that followed him through hallways. Not everyone was as welcoming as Mark had been. One morning, as Cody delivered mail to the marketing department, he overheard a heated conversation in a conference room. The door was ajar, and Eleanor's voice carried clearly. The North End project is not for sale, Richard. I don't care what Meridian Development is offering. Be reasonable, Eleanor, a male voice responded. Their offer is well above market value. The board is interested. The board doesn't make these decisions. I do. That neighborhood needs affordable housing, not another luxury condominium complex. It's business, not charity. We have shareholders to consider. And I have a conscience to consider, Eleanor snapped. This discussion is over. Cody hastily moved away as the door opened fully, and a middle-aged man in an expensive suit stormed out, his face flushed with anger. He nearly collided with Cody, and his expression darkened further. Enjoying the show, mailboy? He sneered. Before Cody could respond, Eleanor appeared in the doorway. Ah, Cody, just the person I wanted to see. Come in, please. The man, Richard, gave Cody another withering look before stalking off. Eleanor closed the door behind them and sighed deeply. Richard Blackwood, our CFO, she explained, gesturing for Cody to sit. Brilliant with numbers, less so with humanity. She seemed tired, the first crack Cody had seen in her usually impeccable composure. I wanted to check in on your GED progress. Mark tells me you're doing well. It's challenging, Cody admitted, especially the math portions. But I'm managing. Eleanor nodded, but her mind seemed elsewhere. After a moment of silence, she spoke again, her voice softer than usual. Do you know why I started this company, Cody? The question caught him off guard. For profit, he ventured immediately, regretting his answer. To his surprise, Eleanor laughed. That's what Richard would say. No, I started Wright Industries to make a difference in communities like the one you come from, places where opportunity is scarce and good people struggle unnecessarily. She moved to the window looking out at the city below. My parents were immigrants. We lived in a tenement on the south side of Chicago. My father worked 3 jobs and still couldn't make ends meet. When I was 16, our building was purchased by a development company. They evicted everyone, demolished the structure, and built luxury apartments. Just like that, 50 families were homeless. She turned back to face him. I swore then that if I ever had the means, I would create a different kind of development company, one that builds communities, not just buildings. The personal revelation stunned Cody. In the weeks he'd worked at Wright Industries, he'd heard rumors and snippets about Eleanor, but nothing this intimate. That's why the North End project matters, she continued. It's a chance to provide affordable housing in a neighborhood that's rapidly gentrifying. But there are always people like Richard who see only the bottom line. Cody wasn't sure why. She was telling him this. What response she expected from a junior employee she hardly knew. But something in her vulnerable moment called to him, reminded him of his mother's quiet dignity in the face of hardship. I think what you're doing is right, he said simply. My neighborhood, we lost a lot of good people when the rent started going up. Places that had been homes for generations, suddenly too expensive for the families that built them. Eleanor studied him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she smiled, a genuine smile that transformed her face. Thank you, Cody. Sometimes it's easy to lose sight of why we do what we do. As he left her office, Cody couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had just transpired, though he couldn't quite define what it was. What he didn't know was that the confrontation he had witnessed was just the beginning of a larger conflict within Wright Industries, one that would eventually draw him in, testing his newfound stability and forcing him to choose between advancement and integrity. The holiday season approaches, bringing new challenges for Cody as he navigates office politics while preparing for his GED exam. Meanwhile, tensions escalate between Eleanor and Richard over the future of Wright Industries. Will Cody's integrity remain intact as he becomes increasingly involved in company matters beyond his position? And what secrets might be revealed as he grows closer to uncovering Eleanor's true motives for bringing him into her company? December arrived with a flurry of snow and a quickening pace at Wright Industries. The company's annual holiday party was approaching, along with end-of-year deadlines that had everyone working late. Cody had settled into a routine, growing more confident in his role, even as the dual demands of work and GED studies left him perpetually exhausted. Dr. Patel's treatment had significantly improved Evelyn's condition. The aggressive new medication regimen had reduced her pain and inflammation, allowing her to move more easily. Watching his mother button her coat without wincing brought Cody a joy that made all his exhaustion worthwhile. They had even managed to move to a better apartment, still modest but clean and warm, with reliable heat and no mold in the bathroom. Their new home was closer to the T-station, cutting Cody's commute by 20 minutes each way. These small improvements in their quality of life felt like miracles after years of struggle. However, Cody's increasing comfort at Wright Industries was marred by the ongoing tension he sensed within the company. The conflict between Eleanor and Richard Blackwood had not subsided. If anything, it seemed to be intensifying. Whispered. Conversations ceased when Cody approached, doors closed before meetings, and an atmosphere of factionalism was developing, those loyal to Eleanor's vision on one side, those aligned with Richard's profit-first approach on the other. One afternoon in mid-December, Cody was delivering mail to the executive floor when he noticed Richard's assistant hurriedly gathering papers from a printer. She dropped several sheets, cursing under her breath, and Cody bent to help her collect them. "Thank you," she said distractedly, quickly shuffling the papers into a folder, but not before Cody glimpsed a heading. Proposal for acquisition of Wright Industries by Meridian Development Corp. The words sent a chill through him. Was Richard planning to sell the company from under Eleanor? The implications were staggering. not just for Eleanor's vision, but for everyone who worked there, including himself. That evening, as Cody was preparing to leave, Mark stopped by his cubicle. "Got a minute?" he asked, his expression uncharacteristically serious. Cody nodded, and Mark led him to an empty conference room, closing the door behind them. "I've been instructed to tell you that Ms. Wright would like you to attend a meeting tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock before regular office hours." "What kind of meeting?" Cody asked, puzzled. Mark hesitated. "It's sensitive. A strategic planning session with a very small group. Ms. Wright specifically requested your presence." "Me? But I'm just—" "You're more than just anything, Cody," Mark interrupted. "Ms. Wright sees something in you. Just be there, 8 sharp, conference room A." That night, Cody could barely sleep. Why would Eleanor want him at an executive meeting? He was a mailroom clerk, a GED student, not a business strategist. The only explanation he could think of was that she had somehow learned about the document. He'd seen. But how? And what did she expect him to contribute? The next morning he arrived at 7:45, his stomach knotted with anxiety. Conference room A was at the end of a long corridor, its doors closed. Cody hesitated, then knocked softly. "Come in," Eleanor's voice called. The room was smaller than he had imagined, with a round table rather than the imposing rectangular ones used in other conference rooms. Eleanor sat with 3 others, Mark, a woman Cody recognized as the head of community development, and an elderly gentleman he had never seen before. "Cody, thank you for joining us," Eleanor said, gesturing to an empty chair. "This is Jerome Walsh, our legal counsel. I believe you know Sophia Chen from community development." Cody nodded, trying to appear more confident than he felt. "I'll get right to the point," Eleanor continued once he was seated. "We're facing a crisis. Richard Blackwood is attempting to orchestrate a hostile takeover of Wright Industries. He's been meeting secretly with Meridian Development and several board members. His plan is to sell the company, maximizing short-term profits for shareholders while abandoning our mission." The news shouldn't have surprised Cody, given what he'd seen, but hearing it stated so baldly was still shocking. "Why am I here?" he asked, the question escaping before he could stop it. Eleanor's lips curved in a slight smile. "Direct as always. You're here because I trust you, Cody. Because you understand what's truly at stake. Not just profits, but people's lives and communities." She slid a folder across the table to him. 3 days ago, an employee noticed something unusual while delivering mail, a document about Meridian's acquisition proposal. That employee could have ignored it, or worse, used the information for personal advantage. Instead, they came to me. Cody's pulse quickened. "I never said anything to anyone." "You didn't have to," Eleanor replied. "Security cameras caught the moment, and your expression told me everything I needed to know. Integrity reveals itself. In unguarded moments, Cody." Jerome Walsh cleared his throat. "The situation is precarious. Richard has convinced several board members, but not enough for a majority. Yet. We need to solidify support for Eleanor's vision before the emergency. Board meeting next week," Sophia nodded. "We've compiled data on the community impact of our projects versus Meridian's profit-driven approach. The numbers support our case, but we need compelling personal stories to drive the point home." All eyes turned to Cody, who felt increasingly out of his depth. "I still don't understand why I'm here. I'm not an executive or a community specialist." "No," Eleanor agreed. "You're something more valuable. You're authentic. The board members who are wavering need to see the human impact of our work. They need to hear from someone who knows firsthand what happens when neighborhoods are treated as commodities rather than communities." Mark leaned forward. "Ms. Wright thinks your perspective could be powerful, Cody. Would you be willing to speak at the board meeting? To share your family's story and why affordable housing matters?" The request stunned him. Public speaking had never been his forte, and the thought of addressing a room full of wealthy executives made his palms sweat. But then he thought of his old neighborhood, of families like his who had been priced out, of his mother's struggles to find decent housing she could afford on her meager income. "I'll do it," he said, surprised by the firmness in his voice. The days that followed were a whirlwind of preparation. By day, Cody continued his regular duties, trying to appear normal despite Richard's increasingly suspicious glances. By night, he worked with Sophia and Mark, crafting his presentation, rehearsing his delivery, steeling himself for the challenge ahead. The night before the board meeting, Cody sat at his kitchen table, staring at his notes. His mother entered, quietly, setting a cup of tea beside him. "You've barely slept this week," she observed, concern etching her features. "Tomorrow's important," he replied, rubbing his tired eyes. Evelyn studied him for a moment. "You know, when you were little, you used to practice your school presentations for me. You'd stand on a chair in the kitchen, so serious, so determined to get every word right." The memory drew a smile from Cody. "I was terrified of forgetting my lines." "But you never did," his mother reminded him, "because you spoke from your heart, not just your notes." He looked up at her, this woman who had sacrificed everything for him, who had taught him to value integrity over ease. "What if I let them down, Mom? What if I can't convince them?" She placed her gnarled hand over his. "Then you'll know you tried. That's all any of us can do, our best with what we have." The board meeting convened at noon the following day in a grand conference room Cody had never entered before. 14 men and women in expensive suits sat around a polished table, their expressions ranging from curious to openly hostile. Richard Blackwood sat at one end, a smug confidence in his bearing. Eleanor occupied the other end, her face serene, despite the stakes. As the meeting progressed, tension filled the room. Financial reports were presented, arguments made, voices occasionally rising in disagreement. Finally, Eleanor stood. "Before we vote, I'd like to introduce someone who can speak to the real-world impact of our company's mission. This is Cody Davidson, a member of our operations team and a resident of one of the communities we serve." Cody rose on legs that felt like water, conscious of the skeptical glances being exchanged. Richard Blackwood's expression was particularly dismissive. "Another of your charity cases, Eleanor?" he drawled. "How touching." The comment stung, but it also ignited something in Cody, a determination to be heard, to be more than just a token or a charity case. "My name is Cody Davidson," he began, his voice steadier than he expected. 6 months ago, I was working at a cafe, barely making enough to afford our apartment in Dorchester, which had black mold and unreliable heat. My mother has rheumatoid arthritis, and I couldn't afford her medication." He paused, making eye contact with each board member. "When Ms. Wright offered me a job, it changed our lives. But it's not just about me. It's about the hundreds of families in my old neighborhood who are being pushed out by rising rents and luxury developments." Cody described the community he had grown up in. The elderly neighbor who had watched him after school while his mother worked. The local grocery store owner who had sometimes slipped them extra food when money was tight. The interconnected web of relationships that constituted a true community. When developers like Meridian come in, they don't see these connections. They see property values and profit margins. But communities aren't just buildings, they're people and relationships and histories. As he spoke, he noticed something changing in the room. Several board members were nodding. One woman was discreetly wiping a tear, and even Richard looked less smug, more thoughtful. "Wright Industries' North End project isn't just about affordable housing," Cody continued. "It's about preserving a community while allowing it to grow. It's about development that lifts people up, rather than pushing them out." He concluded by sharing his own transformation, from a young man without hope to someone with a future, all because someone had believed in his potential and given him an opportunity. When he finished, there was silence. Then an elderly board member at the far end of the table began to applaud, followed by others, until most of the room had joined in. Even Richard offered a grudging nod of respect. The vote that followed was close but decisive. Eleanor's vision for the company would continue. The North End project would proceed as planned. Wright Industries would remain independent. As the board members filed out, several stopped to shake Cody's hand. Richard Blackwood approached last, his expression unreadable. "That was quite a speech, Davidson," he said. "Not what I expected." "Thank you, sir," Cody replied, unsure of what else to say. Richard studied him for a moment. You know, I'm not the villain Eleanor makes me out to be. I simply believe in fiscal responsibility. But perhaps I've lost sight of the human element. With that enigmatic statement, he turned and left, leaving Cody to ponder the complexity of the man he had viewed as a one-dimensional antagonist. Eleanor approached, her eyes bright with unshed tears. You were magnificent, Cody, truly. You spoke with a clarity and passion that moved even the most hardened members of our board. Her praise warmed him, but there was a question that had been nagging at him for weeks. Ms. Wright, why me? Of all the honest people in Boston, why did you choose to help me? Eleanor's was quiet for a moment, her gaze distant. Walk with me, she finally said. They moved through the corridors of Wright Industries, employees nodding respectfully as they passed. Eleanor led him to her office and closed the door behind them. From her desk drawer, she removed an old photograph and handed it to him. It showed a young woman, perhaps 20, standing outside a cafe. With a jolt, Cody realized it was a much younger Eleanor. And beside her, an arm around her shoulders, was a young man who looked startlingly familiar. Your father, Eleanor said softly, answering his unspoken question. Dean Davidson and I worked together at a cafe in Chicago, much like the one where you worked. We were both struggling, both dreaming of better lives. Cody stared at the photograph, at the image of his father, young, smiling, unburdened by the failures and disappointments that would later define him. Dean was brilliant but reckless, Eleanor continued. He had ideas, charm, vision, but no patience, no perseverance. When an opportunity came for me to join a development firm, Dean was offered the same chance. He turned it down, said it was selling out. We lost touch after that. She took the photograph back, her fingers lingering on the image. Years later, when I'd started Wright Industries, I tried to find him. I learned he had a family in Boston, a son. I thought perhaps I could help, offer him a position. But by then, he had already left you and your mother. The revelation was stunning. All these months, Cody had wondered about Eleanor's motives, never imagining that she had once known his father, that her generosity might be connected to that long-ago friendship. So it was pity, he asked, trying to keep the hurt from his voice. No, Eleanor said firmly. It was recognition. When I saw you in that cafe doing the right thing despite your obvious need, I saw what Dean could have been, had he made different choices. I saw integrity that exceeded circumstance. She placed a hand on his shoulder. I didn't help you because of your father, Cody. I helped you despite him. Because you deserved a chance to become the man he never had the courage to be. The truth settled over Cody like a weight and a release simultaneously. His father, who had always been a shadowy absence in his life, had unknowingly provided the connection that changed everything. It was a strange legacy, not one of presence or provision, but of contrast and opportunity born from abandonment. What happens now? Cody asked, still processing this new reality. Eleanor smiled. Now you continue to grow. You complete your GED, which I'm told you're on track to do by February. You consider college. We have an excellent tuition assistance program, and you decide where in this company your talents can best be utilized. The mailroom was never meant to be your final destination, Cody. As he left Eleanor's office that day, Cody felt as if he had stepped through a doorway into yet another new life. The path ahead was not clearly marked, but it was open with possibility in a way he had never experienced before. Have you ever known someone whose integrity completely changed the course of their life? Or perhaps you've been that person yourself? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The winter in Boston was harsh that year, with record snowfalls and bitter cold that seemed to seep through walls and windows. But for Cody, it was a season of unprecedented warmth and growth. After the board meeting, his role at Wright Industries evolved. While he continued to work in operations, Eleanor had created a special position for him as a community liaison, asking him to attend planning meetings and provide perspective on how development projects might impact local residents. His GED studies accelerated as the exam date approached, his confidence growing with each practice test. His mother's health continued to improve under Dr. Patel's care, and for the first time in years, they celebrated Christmas without the shadow of financial anxiety hanging over them. The relationship between Cody and Eleanor deepened as well, evolving into a mentorship that benefited them both. He learned about business, development, and leadership from her, while she gained fresh perspective from his unfiltered observations and authentic connection to the communities Wright Industries served. Even Richard Blackwood had undergone a transformation of sorts. After the board meeting, he had approached Cody several times asking questions about his neighborhood, his experiences with gentrification, the human impact of development decisions. There was a grudging respect developing between them, an acknowledgement that their different viewpoints might both have merit. As January faded into February, Cody faced his GED exam with determination. The hours of study, the late nights poring over textbooks, the practice questions, all culminated in a day-long test that would determine whether he could pursue higher education. When the results arrived 2 weeks later, he opened the envelope with trembling fingers, his mother watching anxiously from across the kitchen table. The simple phrase, "passed with distinction," brought tears to both their eyes. It wasn't just a credential. It was validation, proof that circumstances couldn't limit potential if given the chance to flourish. "Your father would be proud," Evelyn said, then paused, reconsidering. "No, that's not right. Your father would be intimidated. You've already become more than he ever dared to be." The comment wasn't meant with malice, but it struck Cody deeply. Since learning about Eleanor's connection to his father, he had thought often about the man who had abandoned them, not with the resentment he had carried for years, but with a more complex mixture of pity and curiosity. What demons had driven Dean Davidson to leave a family who needed him? What fears had prevented him from seizing the opportunities life had offered? That evening, Cody made a decision he had been contemplating for weeks. He would try to find his father, not for reconciliation, necessarily, but for understanding, for closure. With Eleanor's help, he hired a private investigator. The search took time, but by early March they had an address in a small town in Florida. Dean Davidson was working as a bartender, living in a modest apartment, apparently alone. The decision to visit was not easy, and Evelyn was initially against it. "He doesn't deserve your time," she argued, the old hurt evident in her voice. "I'm not going for him, Mom," Cody explained gently. "I'm going for me, to put the past to rest so I can move forward without its shadow." In the end, she understood, and on a crisp March morning, Cody boarded a plane to Florida, uncertainty and determination warring within him. The bar where his father worked was a weathered beachfront establishment, populated by tourists and locals seeking respite from the afternoon sun. Cody took a seat at the far end of the counter, studying the man who approached to take his order. Dean Davidson was still recognizable from the old photographs, though time had not been kind. His once handsome face was lined and weathered, his hair thinning, his movements carrying the slight tremor of someone who had lived hard. But the eyes, they were Cody's eyes, the same shape and color, though lacking the hope that now animated his son's. "What can I get you?" Dean asked, not really looking at him, the question automatic after years of service. "Information," Cody replied, his voice steadier than he had expected. "About Dean Davidson." His father's head snapped up, eyes narrowing with suspicion. "Who's asking?" "Your son." The simple declaration hung in the air between them, heavy with all the unspoken words of 14 absent years. Dean's face went through a rapid succession of emotions: shock, disbelief, fear, and finally a guarded recognition. "Cody?" he whispered, as if saying the name might conjure a ghost. "It's been a while," Cody said, aiming for casual, but hearing the tension in his own voice. Dean signaled to another bartender to cover for him and led Cody to a quiet table at the back of the bar. They sat across from each other, two strangers connected by blood but separated by choice. "You look good," Dean said finally, his eyes taking in Cody's tailored shirt, his confident posture. "Your mother?" "She's well, no thanks to you." Dean winced but nodded, accepting the barb as his due. "I deserve that. I deserve worse." "Why did you leave?" Cody asked, the question that had haunted him for years finally voiced aloud. His father was quiet for a long moment, staring at his weathered hands. The easy answer is that I was a coward. I couldn't handle the responsibility. But that's not the whole truth. He looked up, meeting Cody's gaze directly for the first time. I left because I was failing you both. Every job I lost, every bill I couldn't pay, every promise I broke, I was becoming a burden, not a provider. In my twisted logic, I thought you'd be better off without me dragging you down. The explanation was both infuriating and pitiful. Cody thought of all the nights his mother had cried, all the father-son events he had attended alone, all the times they had struggled to keep a roof over their heads. "We needed you," he said simply. "Not your success, just you." Dean's eyes filled with tears. "I know that now, but by the time I realized what I'd thrown away, it seemed too late to come back. What could I offer? What right did I have to disrupt your lives again?" They talked for hours, filling in the gaps of years, constructing a fragile bridge across the chasm of abandonment. Dean spoke of his failures and regrets, of jobs lost and opportunities squandered, of the bottle he had turned to for solace. Cody shared their struggles, but also their triumphs, including his recent success at Wright Industries. "Eleanor Wright," Dean interrupted, genuine surprise in his voice. "You work for Ellie?" "She's my mentor," Cody confirmed, watching his father's reaction carefully. "She told me you knew each other." Dean shook his head, amazement evident. "Life is strange. Ellie and we were like family once. She tried to convince me to join that first development firm with her. Said we could change the world together." He gave a bitter laugh. "I told her she was selling out. That corporate America would corrupt her ideals. Shows what I knew." As the afternoon waned, the conversation shifted from the past to the present, and tentatively to the future. There was no miraculous reconciliation, no erasing of the pain Dean had caused. But there was something like understanding, a context for the abandonment that had shaped Cody's life. "I'm not asking to be your father again," Dean said as they prepared to part. "I lost that right. But maybe we could stay in touch, get to know each other as the people we are now." Cody considered the request, weighing the potential for more hurt against the possibility of healing. "I'd like that," he said finally. "Not for the father I needed then, but for the man you're trying to be now." They parted with an awkward handshake that evolved into a brief, stiff embrace. As Cody walked away from the bar, he felt lighter somehow, as if a burden he had carried for years had been set down, not forgotten, but no longer defining his path forward. The trip back to Boston gave him time to reflect on how dramatically his life had changed in just 6 months. From a struggling cafe worker to a respected member of a corporate team, from a high school dropout to a GED graduate considering college applications, from a young man defined by his father's absence to someone charting his own course. When he landed at Logan Airport, he was surprised to see both his mother and Eleanor waiting for him. They had never met before, these two women who had shaped his life in such different ways, but they greeted each other with the warm recognition of shared purpose. "How was it?" Evelyn asked as they walked to the car, her arm linked through his. "Necessary," Cody replied. "Not easy, but necessary." Eleanor nodded in understanding. "Some journeys are like that. We take them not because they're painless, but because the growth they offer is worth the discomfort." As they drove through the nighttime streets of Boston, Cody watched the city lights blur past the window. This city that had once seemed so indifferent to his struggles now felt like home in a deeper sense, a place of opportunity, of connection, of possibility. The future stretched before him, no longer a source of anxiety, but of anticipation. There would be challenges, certainly. His position at Wright Industries would continue to evolve, requiring him to develop new skills and face new tests. His relationship with his father would require careful navigation, balancing forgiveness with self-protection. His educational journey was just beginning, with college applications on the horizon. But for the first time, Cody felt equipped to meet these challenges. He had supportive mentors in Eleanor and Richard, who had surprisingly become something of an ally. He had his mother's unwavering belief in him. Most importantly, He had discovered his own resilience and integrity, qualities that no circumstance could diminish. As they pulled up to the apartment building he now called home, Cody realized something profound. The phone that had started his journey, the device that a wealthy woman had lost and he had returned despite his desperate need, had been more than just a catalyst for change. It had been a mirror, reflecting his true character back to him at a moment when he needed to see it most. We are defined not by what we take from life, but by what we give back. Not by the opportunities we are handed, but by what we do with them. Not by the mistakes of our past, but by the choices of our present. For Cody Davidson, a simple act of honesty had opened a door to transformation. But it was his courage to walk through that door, to embrace change while holding tight to his core values, that had truly altered his destiny. The lost phone had been returned, but what Cody had found in the process was far more valuable: himself. "You know," Eleanor said as they stood outside his apartment building, "we're breaking ground on the North End project next month. I was thinking you might want to take the lead on community relations. No one understands the importance of that balance between development and preservation better than you do." The offer took him by surprise. "Are you sure I'm ready for that kind of responsibility?" Eleanor smiled, the same expression of confident belief she had shown that first day in the cafe. "I've never been more certain of anything. You've proven yourself not just through your work ethic, but through your heart. That's what this company needs. People who understand that buildings are meant to serve people, not the other way around." Evelyn squeezed his arm with pride. "You've come so far, sweetheart. Your journey is just beginning." As Cody looked between these two women who had believed in him when he hadn't believed in himself, he felt a surge of gratitude so powerful it almost overwhelmed him. From a lost phone to a found purpose, from desperate poverty to promising future, from isolation to community, his path had been unexpected but transformative. "I accept," he said, his voice firm with conviction, "and I promise I won't let you down." "You never have," Eleanor replied, "and I don't believe you ever will." That night, as Cody stood at his apartment window looking out at the Boston skyline, he reflected on the strange and winding path that had brought him here. One small decision, to return rather than keep a lost phone, had triggered a cascade of changes that had transformed not just his circumstances, but his understanding of himself and his potential. Perhaps that was the true meaning of integrity, not just doing the right thing because it was right, but recognizing that in doing so, we shape not only our actions, but our character, not only our present, but our future. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new responsibilities, new opportunities for growth. But Cody Davidson was ready for them all, armed with the most valuable possession he had ever acquired, not a phone or a job or an education, but the knowledge that within him lay the strength to overcome, the wisdom to choose rightly, and the heart to make a difference in the world around him. And in the end, isn't that the greatest reward of all? Congratulations. Type 9 in the comments so that I know you stayed until the end with me. Thank you for watching, and until tomorrow's story on this same channel.